TGIF, it's Friday. That means it's time for Movie Spotlight, where we discuss some of the latest releases on streaming services or at the Korean box office. Braving the elements and gracing us with his presence in the studio this week is film critic Jason Bechervaise. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Eunice. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's a bit wet outside.
It really is. Yeah, another bout of storm. Hopefully everyone is keeping safe despite the elements. Well, today I understand we're talking about two flicks as usual, one from Hollywood and one a local flick. Let's begin with Nope, which is Jordan Peele's new film. It has polarized some critics and audiences, I understand. Before we get to the film itself, though, Jason, tell us a bit about this director.
Sure, he has an interesting career. The American filmmaker began working in the entertainment industry as an actor, actually, having been cast in Mad TV in the early 2000s. And he's acted in several shows over the years, including the Fargo series as an FBI agent. And he was also in a film called Keanu in 2016, which he co-wrote and produced. But I think he's really made a name for himself following his directorial debut, Get Out, featuring Daniel Kaluuya as the lead who discovers horrifying secrets when he visits his white girlfriend's parents, that premiered in Sundance in 2017. And for me, it's probably one of the most significant horror films of the last 20 years. And Peele won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars in 2018. And then his second film, Us, starring Lupita Nyong'o, went on to accrue $255 million, in part because of the success of Get Out. It wasn't as critically embraced as Get Out, but clearly he is very talented and he's able to attract audiences, just through his name alone, and not making films based on existing IP. And he's notable for featuring, or his films are well known for featuring black actors as the leads. And so his films deal with racial politics and, diversity in the US, or lack of. And, through interesting genres of horror and the thriller. He also produced Spike Lee's Black Klansman in 2018, so... not just a director, but also, of course, a writer and a producer. Some comparisons have been made to M. Night Shyamalan, who was seen as a kind of new Spielberg figure in the late 1990s and early 2000s, with A Sixth Sense and Signs. But audiences kind of became accustomed and somewhat tired of his twists. And I think the challenge for Peele is to kind of continue to make films that are innovative but also different as well.
Innovative. Okay. Well, he certainly seems like a man of many talents, and I understand his newest film, called Nope, has some Steven Spielberg vibes with
it does, yeah.
UFO themes.
Oh, it does. Especially, when I was watching it, I watched the trailer, and there's definitely kind of the close encounters of the third kind vibe to it. But actually, watching the film itself reminded me more of Jaws, actually, interestingly. And so I have to keep this synopsis brief, because if I go into too much depth, I fear I might reveal some spoilers, and I think the director himself would rather you go in completely cold. But essentially, the film follows two siblings who run a California ranch, and they discover something unusual in the sky. And joining them also is this owner of a theme park who played by Steven Yeun, who seeks to profit from this, well, they all do, from this extraterrestrial activity. David Kaluuya and Keke Palmer play the siblings, and as I mentioned, Steven Yeun is this theme park owner in what seems like the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and Steven Yeun fans, I'm sure, are excited to see him in this flick as well. So, Jason, you mentioned that you saw the what do you call it, the reel. Would you say that it works in your view? Like, does it sit critically? Is it...
I tell you what, I love the first hour. The first hour, as the director is kind of setting everything up, thematically, and it was really riveting, and tonally is quite interesting. But in the second hour, though, as once everything has kind of been established, pretty much. I'm trying not to kind of spoil it for everyone, but for me it was a bit disappointing in the second half, because it just becomes this film where you've got these interesting characters who are coming against this thing in the sky, and they're learning more about it and how to essentially what they're trying to do is, because in a day and age of YouTube and trying to capture something on camera that will generate significant revenue for them. I mean that's ultimately their aim. But obviously it could be rather dangerous. So it gets pretty tense and horrifying in places, but I don't think it quite has the layers that certainly Get Out has. It's certainly very well shot. It's an accomplished film, absolutely. Some of it strikes me as a bit of a stretch of the imagination. I know, of course, this is science fiction and we got UFOs. But at the same time, I mean, law enforcement are pretty non-existent, and America has these. I mean, American skies are
maybe they were pre-kidnapped by the UFOs.
Are some of the most, highly, defended in the world, I'm sure. And it's something. I had a lot of questions, and I was trying to put them aside. But the second half does, to me anyway, felt quite like Jaws. You've got this thing or creature, or whatever it may be. And you've got this small number of individuals who are up against it, and then you have this kind of climatic sequence. First half, I love the way it's all set up, but I just think once that's kind of all revealed, it to me was lacking some imagination, which is what I think Jordan Peele's very good at bringing to a film. I was a bit disappointed.
Okay. Well, I understand Nope has also opened in theaters here in Korea earlier this week as well on Wednesday, I believe. What has the reaction been so far?
I think it's reflected much of the US, actually. The reactions was, it was certainly polarized critics. And it hasn't, I mean, it's performed pretty well, and it's certainly performed quite well in the UK as well. But here, it's the reaction amongst critics has been pretty strong, but amongst kind of cinema goers, it's you kind of have, this is a great film, and I tend to look at the kind of netizen ratings, which can be manipulated. So you have to, I mean, you can't look too much into those, but certainly I think it's generating a wide range of opinions, and I would say it's leaning towards disappointment.
And do you think the success of the film in North America might mean we will see more of Jordan Peele and his original Peele films?
I mean, I hope so. I think we will. I think the trick for here, what's important for him, I think, is that he doesn't become this like one-trick pony and Shyamalan. I think he won't, and I think he's clearly a very talented filmmaker. But I'm eager to see more, and I felt that this film was lacking. It's a very ambitious film. It certainly plays with a bit of nostalgia from the 1970s and 80s, but also feels somewhat contemporary. A film made for this particular era, but I found the second half in particular a little bit just not particularly interesting. I do hope we get to see more films that are not based on IP, because Hollywood these days it's all sequels, it's all franchises, and there are very few filmmakers out there that are able to direct a film that's not a Marvel film. It's not part of a franchise, and Jordan Peele is able to do that, and long may that continue.
Okay, well, Now on to our Korean film, which is an independent feature. It's titled Drown, another single word title, directed by Lim Sang-soo. This film premiered in Jeonju back in May, which is where you saw the film.
It is. It was for me. I immediately took notice because it's a film. It's a KAFA film, the Korean Academy of Film Arts. It's one of Korea's most prestigious and most famous film academies. You know, alumni includes, of course, Bong Joon-ho, Choi Dong-hun, Chang Jun-won, and the other Lim Sang-soo, because there are two Lim Sang-soos. There is the Lim Sang-soo who's made the masterpieces such as Tears, The President's Last Bang, Good Lawyer's Wife. And there is now a much younger Lim Sang-soo who helmed this film, Drown. And so when I'm kind of scrolling through the program, whenever I see a KAFA film, I always kind of highlight it. And that was true when it came to Jeonju this year. And this is where I saw the film. In terms of the plot, it follows Dowoo, played by Joongok. And he's an intriguing character. He runs an old motel close to a lake that is located just 20 kilometers from the border with North Korea. Mm-hmm. Now, he's also looking after his grandmother, who's suffering from dementia, and she disappears. And then the owner of this hotel starts spending time with this mysterious guest as the body count begins to rise. Also stars Kim Do-gun, Kim Yong-gyo, and some will recognise Kong Min-jung from Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. She plays a detective in the film because the police are called, of course, because we've got a grandmother that's missing, and other things begin to happen as well.
So I caught the trailer, and it looked very much like a horror flick.
There are actually some similarities.
Just a heads up to those who may not love horror flicks. But Korean filmmakers such as Bong Joon-ho and Kim Ji-woon are renowned for how they deal with isolated characters, using genres to convey complex themes. So do you see any of these qualities in this younger director?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say the film is somewhat derivative. It's clearly influenced by Korean genre filmmakers, not least Kim Ji-woon. And actually, the Lim Sang-soo name kind of almost hints at a nod to this generation inadvertently. But yeah, the film's plot and reminded me of a 1998 film by Kim Ji-woon called The Quiet Family. In that film, it stars Namoni, Song Kang-ho, Choi Min-sik. It's set in a lodge in the middle of nowhere, and basically guests just they check in and then they end up in body bags, effectively. And so when I was watching this film, there were clear similarities. And there's also a very kind of intense scene that's reminiscent of a scene in The Wailing. And so the problem when you have a film that's so derivative, is this filmmaker able to leave his own mark? I think he kind of does. I love the lighting in the film. The lighting's terrific. The mise en scène, the production values are pretty good. For the most part, it's engrossing. It kind of, during the middle act, it struggles somewhat to kind of maintain momentum, which is true of many films. But I do see some potential here. KAFA, the Korean Academy of Film Arts, they're quite well known for their genre films. And I think this is a good one. Is it outstanding? Are we seeing a new Bong Joon-ho or a new Kim Ji-woon? I'm not sure about that, but certainly, this director has talent, and I want to see more of more of him, more of his films. It has issues, but it is a pretty dark film. It's not a film I'd recommend for the lighthearted.
And for your final thoughts, perhaps we can talk about a little on the performances, on the actors in the film.
Yeah, no, the leads were superb, especially Joongok. He plays this guy who has a rather mysterious personality. He seems isolated. He becomes a victim of his own circumstances, and he essentially goes off the rails. I think could speak to, you know, a generation who feel that they've, you know, been failed by society and yeah, feeling ostracized. But it does get quite dark and gloomy, and yeah, it's not for everyone. And I think some might not particularly like the way the film ends. So yeah, it is recommended, but yeah, with some caution.
Perhaps if you're in the mood for something
performances,
darker,
though, are excellent,
moodier.
especially the leading protagonist.
Okay, good to know. So that was Drown or Paddlehole for the Korean film, and Nope, a review of Nope, the Hollywood thriller by Jordan Peele with Jason Bechervaise today. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for having me.